Hello, everybody. This is Monica Paolini from Senza Fili, and today we're talking about the Open RAN ecosystem, what it is in real life commercial deployments, and what it's going to look like in the future. And I have with me Azita Arvani, who is the CEO of North America at Rakuten Symphony, to share the learning experience and the expectations in Japan. Azita, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Monica. It's great to be here and talk to you.
And I think that everybody that cares anything about Open RAN, they know about Rakuten and know about you, but maybe you can give us an introduction about what it is that you do at Rakuten Symphony.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Monica. You know, I've been in the telecom industry for a long time, seeing the progression from 2G to 3G to 4G and now to 5G. And so now at Rakuten Symphony and Rakuten Mobile, we're really seeing the future of telecom today. And through Rakuten Symphony, we're bringing it to the market in America. So I'm proud to say that I'm CEO of Rakuten Symphony in North America. And we are bringing Open RAN, cloud native, and massively automated telecom solutions to the operators, enterprises, and governments in North American market.
Now, before we talk about Open RAN, let's clear this out. Rakuten Symphony and Rakuten Mobile.
Yeah,
it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. They are close cousins. So Rakuten Mobile is the first operator in the world that decided to take the big leap and go from, rather than doing a legacy network architecture, start a mobile network in Japan using Open RAN and cloud native and lots of automation in its network. So that journey started in middle of 2018, and we started our services in April of 2020. And with our 4G services, which then 6 months later, we moved to 5G services. So that's Rakuten Mobile in Japan. So as we were going through that journey, a lot of operators wanted to know, how we did this, if they could do it on their own. And so through these conversations, we realized that what we've done in Rakuten Mobile is valuable to operators elsewhere. So we took that platform and we're offering it as a way for others to be able to take that journey, but do it faster and learn from the things that we have experienced and be able to use the technologies that we have handpicked and put together. And so that's Rakuten Symphony. That's what offers that platform to the rest of the world.
So we have an innovative technology and an innovative business model running on top of it. So that's all very exciting. We're going to get into that. But before, let's start with another definition, the one of Open RAN, because there is a sense in which the O-RAN Alliance interfaces is what is Open RAN, right? And then for some people it's less, and for some people it's more. So what is Open RAN to you?
So in the purest sense, Open RAN is enabling standard interfaces that allows you to break the monolithic RAN and then be able to put together in a scalable and dynamic way. But if Open RAN has to be complemented by two other big drivers, the cloud and massive automation. So only that combination together with Open RAN and being cloud native and software powered and having automation, that's what really drives all the benefits that come from Open RAN.
Yeah, and I think that you raise here an important issue, that it's more than just the basics, because if you just sort of strip it down and it's just the interface, then the advantage of it is not that big. There might still be an advantage, but it's very limited.
Yeah.
So there is not, you still can do it, but why? And so the question then is, okay, so in order to benefit from this larger set of advantages and strengths that Open RAN brings to the table, what kind of ecosystem do you need? Or is it any different from what we currently have?
Right. So in terms of ecosystem, if you think about, we were talking about cloud native. So for example, in our stack, we're talking about 5 different layers, right? We're talking about the cloud layer. The cloud layer, it has to be the latest and greatest cloud, but also be optimized for telecom requirements, which basically means like things like be able to handle low latency and be able to have high availability. These are the things that radio workloads need that enterprise workloads do not need, right? So that's the cloud layer. And then on top of that, we have the network functions that once you virtualize them, then you can run them on top of the COTS hardware, which greatly reduces the CapEx that goes into proprietary hardware and software. And then that has to be complemented with what we call intelligent operations, which is, you can think of it as the next generation OSS, is being able to monitor these network functions, being able to gather, collect real-time or near real-time data from the network elements, and then being able to correlate them and being able to respond to them and use the AI ML models on them. So that's that layer of network intelligent operations that really automates the operations part of it. And then on top of that, we can have the business support systems, the billing, the customer management, customer care, and being able to offer it in a very frictionless way, just like the way you buy your applications on your mobile phone from an app store. The idea of having a marketplace where you can buy the telecom applications from marketplace. And if you want to go even further than that, up the value chain, you can think about the over-the-top applications that operators for a long time have been wanting to bring to their customers, but they haven't been able to really make a big dent into it. But if you get the underlying platform right, then you can introduce over-the-top services on top of that as well.
No, absolutely. And I want to get to the marketplace later, but let's just sort of prepare the ground and get there step by step. So let's start with sort of the equipment in the RAN, the strictly speaking in the RAN. How many vendors do you need? Because so in Open RAN, the idea is that you can have as many vendors as you want, but at some point it's too many vendors, or at some point maybe not enough vendors. So how do you decide? How do you find the right number
balance
for you as an operator?
Right. So I think that first of all, that's a great question. And with Open RAN, or just basically open interfaces in any kind of system, you enable the choice to be able to bring new components from different vendors. But the final question is really about what is that the operator wants to do? What are the objectives of the operator? What is the end result that we want? And what environment that operator lives in, right? So every operator is different. They all have, like the brownfield operators have other existing systems that they have to live in. So based on that, then you decide what kind of system you want to run. And in some geographies, you may have special supply chain that you need to take advantage of. So it really depends on the requirement, the business results that you want to have, where you're starting from, and what kind of ecosystem is available to you. Based on that, you create the Open RAN environment for you. So that could take a few vendors, that could take a lot of vendors, but of course, after you bring more vendors to this, then the integration part becomes more involved. So you have to consider that as well. But the bottom line in making that decision is to be able to make sure that the control of that is with the operator. As an operator, you're not outsourcing your innovation, your upgrades, and all that to someone else. That you understand the environment that you have, and that if you want to change the vendors in the future, you're free to do that. That you're not losing those degrees of freedom, and you're not getting locked in to a vendor.
Yeah. So in a way, as an operator, you start owning a part that used to be the vendor's responsibility, because the system integration would have been done by the vendors if you only have one vendor.
Right.
If you have multiple vendor, then you have to take that onto yourself. And I guess that's a process because operators have to learn to do that. And so maybe at the beginning they will have fewer vendors, and then as they get more comfortable, they can expand the network of vendors, right?
Yeah, that would generally like that. That's generally makes more sense to be able to, start with things like, for example, in our platform for Rakuten Symphony, we have picked the best of breed elements that have worked for us in Japan, and we continually looking at that and making sure that we are upgrading it to, if there are other vendors, we are upgrading to them, but that then we put it together in a curated platform that's pre-tested, pre-integrated, so that helps the operators to get to where they want to go faster and in less cost. And as the ecosystem evolves, and of course that platform evolves as well, and even within that, depending on the brownfield or the greenfield that we're working with, the choice that you have in those components change, right? So.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move one step forward. And you talked before about virtualization, cloud native architectures. How is that going to have an impact on Open RAN, and how is Open RAN having an impact on that? Because clearly that's more than just RAN. It's an end-to-end network.
Right. So if you think about disaggregating radio access network, right, there is different levels of disaggregation. So in general, I think about it as three levels of disaggregation. One level is to go from this monolithic stack that's locked in with one vendor to the horizontal layers of different parts of the RAN that are interfacing together using open standards. So that's going from sort of closed monolithic RAN to Open RAN. So that's one level. The next level of that is to go from proprietary software that's running on top of proprietary hardware to going to the cloud native software that's running on top of COTS hardware. And that's really, really important because this hardware software that's proprietary, that's very expensive, hard to change, expensive to provision, all that. Versus when you go to cloud native software that runs on COTS software, you're going on a completely different cost structure, right? So you're going from a very custom built hardware cost structure to Moore's law and IT server cost structure. So that really changes the equation in terms of cost, but also in terms of flexibility. You're going from network elements that were very hardware based and appliance based. Now you're going to software model, which it's easy to scale, easy to provision. You provision based on actual use rather than in peak use, so you're utilizing your resources much better. So that disaggregation layer is very, very important. And then the third layer, you could even go deeper into that. Like you could look at your radio unit itself and decompose it and see if you can put it back together in a way that's more efficient and higher performance. And we've done that with, for example, with our millimeter wave base stations that we partner with Qualcomm and Airspan on.
Yeah, absolutely. And but it's not just cost. It's more than cost that you benefit from when you have this virtualized type of network where you can use hardware and software as separated. And that's an issue. The flexibility brings redundancy effectively, and that increases reliability, which is crucial, right? So does this give us a different way to look at how we measure the RAN performance?
Yeah, that's a great bundle of questions that were put together very nicely. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about the performance, in the legacy way, you have these network elements, and then you have the element management systems, and then these element management systems, and they have a network management system that runs on top of it. So the data gets collected from these network elements maybe every 40 minutes or so, and then you process it, and everything is kind of like slow and not very flexible. And if you kind of change, if you think about how we are doing it, for example, is with what we call observability framework, which basically looks at these containerized network functions and gets the data from them on a near real-time basis, and then is able to correlate that data, not just the network data, but also we can complement that with other kinds of data like social media data and otherwise, and then go from the KPIs that are so technology and infrastructure based to the kind of indicators that's really about the customer experience and how we can better serve the customer.
Yeah, it sounds like the Copernican revolution here. It's like you look at it from a different point of view, right? Now, okay, so at Rakuten Mobile, you learned a lot when you tried to do it at the beginning. Nobody else was doing it, and you had to learn a lot in terms of how to integrate things. And then that lesson has been sort of incorporated in Rakuten Symphony, correct? So maybe if you can tell us first, what is that you learned from a system integration point of view, a Rakuten Mobile, and then we can talk about how is that developed in a service through Rakuten Symphony for other operators.
Yes, I'd be happy to. The one big thing that we have learned and sort of validated our hypothesis is that, you know, having a software-based system is much more flexible and much more dynamic and easy to iterate on, right? So the fact that sometimes on a daily basis you can make changes to the software, so you see an error, you fix it, you try it, and you could do that constantly on. So that in itself has given us a big leg up, right? You cannot possibly do that in a hardware-based architecture that you iterate on the issue. So that's a big piece of it. And then also being able to, since we are an operator, number one, we want to choose the best of breed components for ourselves, because that's how we get the best service. We can offer the best service in Japan. So by doing that, then we're able to put these elements together and create the platform that's then easier for other operators to take, and it'll make their system integration work much lighter and lower cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you sort of learned, I wouldn't say the hard way, but you had to start where there was no history behind, and then you end up with the marketplace. So how did you make the step to that part?
Yeah, so I think in general, though, the things that we have done in Rakuten Mobile and Rakuten Symphony is really being inspired by adjacent markets. So for example, the idea that what's important in terms of resiliency, for example, and scalability is like looking at what hyperscalers have done with the cloud, right? So not the elements of that data center, for example, are not by themselves important, but what's important is what the system is capable of doing, what the system's resiliency is, what's the system's availability is. So that similar concept we have been inspired in here is that it's not like the legacy model that every network element has to have the exact same constraints. It's the system has to have that level of 5 nines, high availability, high throughput and all that. Is the system. So each element of that could go up and down, like we have containerized network functions that could die and then new ones come out. That is okay. Those are all dispensable. But as long as the system is resilient. So that's one big thing that we learned from there. The other one, like for example, with the Wi-Fi access point, I mentioned to you about disaggregating the radio unit itself, is taking a look at that and saying, what can we do to make the millimeter access point to be the same the price point as a Wi-Fi access point. So we took it all apart and put it back together with the help of our partners, and you were able to kind of white box it, if you will, and create something that. So I would say a lot of it had to do with being inspired by what other folks had done and move the industry forward, rather than looking at the legacy telecom and trying to do incremental improvements on top of that.
Yeah, so its ability to move in a different direction, but also listen to what other people are doing as well. Right. Now, Yeah.
sorry, if I may just, Monica, add one other thing, like you have heard the phrase software is eating the world, right? And
Mhm.
if you look at it, software was eating the world in a lot of industries, but when it came to telecom, somehow that wasn't happening, right? So being able to like push the telecom network architecture into the software world, that's really a big game changer. And that's another thing that we looked at what is happening outside of telecom, right? The digital transformation that's going on in every other industry, and how can we bring it into the telecom industry?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really important to look at other industries as well. You don't want to be too narrow focused on yours. But let's do keep an eye on our industry, and we have companies like you guys, Greenfield operator, and you're learning a lot. Dish is learning a lot as well. How does your learning in Open RAN transfer to a brownfield? And specifically, how as Rakuten Symphony can you think you can help brownfields as well when that's not your background?
That's a great question. And so let's start with the greenfields, right? So for example, our Japan deployment is a greenfield. Now we have a deployment in 1&1. And actually, we had the 1&1 had an announcement that we got the 1 gigabits per second on downlink and 3 milliseconds in latency. So the results are impressive, that to show that Open RAN is not just about cost but also about being able to have very high performance. But even in that sense, where there's two greenfields, our Japan implementation was the first implementation. The 1&1 is even a sort of like a Rakuten 2.0, if you will. So that's even better. Like, so we have upgraded our platform since then, and what they have is even a more advanced set. But then within 1&1 or any other operator, it's a matter of like, what is the environment that they are in? And of course, with brownfield, you have more existing infrastructure that you have to work with. And then from there, look at what is it that they want to achieve in terms of business results. And then what kind of ecosystem is available to them, which of course has regional implications as well. So that's in terms of like just generally speaking with operators and greenfields. But when it comes to the brownfield, of course, brownfields make a lot of investments in their networks, and they continuously make investments in their network. So then the question becomes, at what point are they going to invest more into their future rather than maintaining their legacy systems? And that may start as a smaller number, and then it grows over time. But all operators, like the entire telecom industry, knows that they have to go to a softer powered, more dynamic, more flexible, more automated kind of a network. So they know that it's a matter of like, when do you make that transition, and where is it that that sort of, I call it a pocket of greenfield, can show itself. So for example, when you're doing 5G deployments, let's say you got a new spectrum for 5G, you got C-band and 5G, and you want to deploy that using Open RAN. So that would be one investment in the future in that area. Or you want to say, I want to go into intelligent operations. I want to modernize my operations layer. Like for example, with what we've done with AT&T for their building of their wireless and wireline, and helping them accelerate those builds. So whether it's greenfield and brownfield, greenfields can do all of that investment, 100% of their investment into the future architecture. The brownfields, we won't recommend that they do 100% investment in this, in just going from 0 to 1 in one step. But that thought process has to be there. The investment has to go in there in order to be able to compete in the future, because everyone is moving to become a digital service provider. And if you are not making those investments in the future, you're going to become distinct.
Absolutely. And that's where you'd have different operators selecting different apps. So you want to preserve the flexibility to choose what they need when they need it in a kind of sort of modular form, for a better lack of a
Right.
better word.
Right, exactly. So with software, again, you have much more flexibility, and that has to be combined with automated integration, right? So then you do the integration once, but you're able to repeat it many times, and you can scale it. So that's where the automation becomes a big part of this whole journey to software powered network as well.
Absolutely. Now, a final question. You've learned a lot, and we're still all learning a lot from Open RAN. In your view, what is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity that Open RAN opens? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, bad pun.
Well, I think the biggest opportunity is becoming a softer powered architecture and network infrastructure, because that is very very powerful. If you think about having a software based supply chain versus a hardware based supply chain, in hardware based supply chain you try to minimize the SKUs, right? To minimize the different models of hardware you have. In software, that's not the case at all. You can mix and match. You have the different things that you can bring together. It's much more dynamic. It gives you many degrees of freedom. So that is super important for in terms of the opportunity there. And of course, add to it the automation, right? Because automation means that you're able to put more of your investment into what really serves the customer. You can make your operations staff much more productive, and you could really concentrate on providing more 5G, providing more fiber, providing more services for your customers, as opposed to worrying about how to maintain these monolithic hardware-based systems. In terms of challenge, I would say the biggest challenge is the fact that this had never been done before. We were the first one in this journey, and now other people are coming on, and we're very happy about that, and we support it. We share our experiences. We're very transparent about it. But at the same time, it's frightening, right? It's a road less traveled, and it's frightening. So it's what we're hoping to do with bringing the platform with Rakuten Symphony is making that transition easier by being able to share our story of our journey, making it easier for people. So I would say that's one key challenge. And I would say the other one is with respect to Open RAN radio. We need to cultivate that ecosystem of Open RAN radios to be able to support the deployments around the world.
Absolutely. These are tough challenges, but also very exciting ones to be working on. So Azita, thanks a lot for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you so much, Monica. It was a pleasure talking to you.
And thank you all for listening. And this is part of a report. And so you can read the transcript of this conversation, and you can read the whole report, and you can get it at senseafili.com. Thank you all.